Welcome to another episode of Stack and Scale. I'm Brandon Redlinger, as always, and today I'm bringing you a really exciting episode. So when I first launched Stack and Scale, I asked all of you, who should I have on? Who's doing something really cool, really interesting out there in GTM using AI? And the name that came up the most was Justin Norris. Now, this episode is a little bit more in the weeds. We actually go into an automation using a tool called Retool. But he does a great job at actually keeping it high level and walking you through his thinking and the strategy behind how he set up this tool. So what we're actually doing is taking all of your conversation data from a system like Gong and turning it into an insight engine where you can actually ask it questions and get a lot of structured data out of it. So it is a little bit nerdier, but I thought this conversation was fantastic. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Justin. Justin, welcome to the show.
Hey, Brandon. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited. So tell the audience what we're going to be building today.
Yep. So today I'm going to walk you through a retool automation that turns your call recordings into a market insight engine. And the big idea here is that, most companies are sitting on a gold mine of market insight inside their Gong database or wherever they're recording calls, but they can't access that easily at scale. So this automation is basically going to extract your calls from wherever they're living, then dig into them and take out the mentions on whatever topic that you're interested in. For the purpose of today, we're going to be looking at self-reported attribution. So when our sales reps are asking people, hey, how did you hear about us? Something that is, of interest to pretty much every marketer. And then it's going to act like a market analyst and kind of perform that first layer of analysis and classification on that data. And then it's going to serve it up to you in a database, email, Slack, wherever you want.
Dude, I love this. I could probably have used this at every company I've ever been at.
Me too. Yeah.
Dude, I love this. All right, let's dive in if you're ready.
Okay, great. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so we are in Retool right now. It is a really robust enterprise grade platform that I really like, but big idea I want to put across is that you could do this at N8N, you could do this in Zapier, you could do this in Ricardo. It's much more about the design pattern and the systems thinking than it is about any tool-specific knowledge.
I love that you pointed that out. Don't get caught up so much in which tool this is. And if you use Make, if you use N8N, don't let this stop you. What we're going to go over is actually just the foundation and the thinking. Okay, so what is there a reason you chose Retool over the others, or is that just the one you're most familiar with?
It's what I have access to. So we have Zapier and we have Retool. And for the particular pipelines I'm working on right now, it was going to be a bit too heavy in terms of scale for Zapier. So Retool it was. But yeah, like a lot of times, you don't get to go out and just buy whatever tool you want. You have what your organization has. But I've really been enjoying working with this.
Nice.
And then the other thing you might notice is like, ooh, this looks like kind of codey. There's all this code everywhere, and that can seem a little bit intimidating. But I am not a developer, and I think the amazing thing about AI and LLMs is that if you've got ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever by your side, you can basically make any tool no code as long as you know what to ask for and where to put it. You can generate all this because I don't write this code, but I can make this do a lot of cool stuff. So don't let that intimidate you.
Yeah, and I mean also like, whether it's Clay or N8N or any of those tools, a lot of them have built-in AI to help you generate the code anyway, right? Like, is it the same with Retool?
They do have like an assistant that lives here that can build stuff for you. I find that those tend to get, they can sometimes go off the rails a bit. So usually when I'm building stuff like this, I'll kind of almost co-architect it with an LLM. So I typically use Gemini for work or ChatGPT for personal projects. And I'll start it even at the beginning of like, all right, here's what I'm trying to do. How should I think about this? You kind of talk it through, get the architecture in place, and then down to the level of starting to build. And the amazing thing about a lot of these tools, I think the same thing is true of N8N, is like you can extract all of this in a JSON format. So you can upload that into your LLM, say, hey, give me some feedback on this. Or if you need to refresh context in a new chat, it's really, really easy to like actually show it what you're building on and have really good context.
I love it. And so when I've done stuff like this, I usually link it to, I say, hey, here is the documentation for, in this case, Retool. Is that what you do here, or is that what you would recommend as well?
Yeah. I'll pass it over the documentation as well. And For most apps, it's pretty good. Sometimes, especially if you use something like a little bleeding edge, some tools that are newer, you may need to correct it, or it can
Mm,
hallucinate things. So you can't
yep.
check out completely, and that's fine. Like, you obviously need to be really engaged when you're doing something like this, but it can get you 90% of the way there. And particularly once you start getting really fluent with the tool, the velocity that you can achieve in building some of this stuff is pretty incredible.
Heck yeah, heck yeah. All right, enough of the preamble. Let's dive right in.
All right, so the first thing you're going to do, trigger, this could be scheduled, this could be called by another webhook. I'm just kind of leaving this as a shell for now. But the main first thing that we're doing is getting Gong calls. So just plugging in the Gong API here, and you can filter this a little bit by date, but essentially, unfortunately, on the Gong server, you can't filter really narrowly by what you're looking for. So the best way to do this is just to extract calls for a date range, include in the output the information that you're interested in, and then filter over it within your automation. So right now I'm just getting calls for like a 2-week window. And the other main thing that's very important is that we want to expose trackers. If you've used Gong before, a tracker is something that you can set up. It can be like kind of a smart tracker or a keyword-based tracker. It's essentially saying just tag calls when they include a mention of this thing. And in this case, we have a how did you hear about us tracker that's tagging calls when that question is asked. So that output is going to give you, look, I've got 961 calls here. So that's a lot of calls. Not all of
Mm.
them have that tracker. So the next thing I need to do is filter over those calls in code and then output an array. And in this case, I just have one call that matches right now that we're going to look at. But again, really nice thing with code is you've got an array of data. You can loop over it. You can extract anything you want. It's very, very flexible, and it can produce nice, tidy output that you can then use in your next step.
Okay, so a filter called by tracker ID, and that's where you're putting in the tracker equals whatever we're calling how'd you hear about us?
Exactly. Yeah, actually,
Okay.
have that set up as an input parameter here. So
Okay, got it.
this is another
Oh, that's a tracker ID.
exactly. So imagine taking this and having it as almost a generic pipeline that you could use for any insight that you might imagine. And you might have a list of 20 different things that you're interested in, and you want to loop over this again and again. So having this being dynamic means that you can actually have like another parent workflow that starts it, loops over those different things that you want to track, and just subs in one ID after another. And that lets you have something that's really generic that is reusable.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, so that's another good thing, not repeating yourself and making things really generic when you can. But yeah, it's going to take in that tracker ID from the start trigger here, and then it's going to take a map of all those calls from the previous step, loop over them, and only output the ones where that tracker ID is present.
I see. Okay, got it. That makes sense. Yes, trackers equal true. Got it.
And basically, this pattern is something that you can see with a lot of similar pipelines like this, where you start with like a big array of stuff, you filter it down only to what's relevant, and then you start to do some more detailed work looping over those specific things and analyzing them. And that's what we do in the next step. This is a loop step, which, very similar to looping in any other automation tool that you're used to. It takes an array or line items as an input, and then you can do things there. You can run just a single step over that loop, or you can have a multi-step process, which is what Retool here is calling a function. So this actually is now zooming into another layer, and the value is just a parameter that lets you pass in each iteration of that loop. So in this case, it's all the data related to that call as a little bundle, one at a time, is being passed into that loop. And I'll just go over to the next tab here, which is going to show you now we're inside that loop. And this is the things that are these are the things that are happening to each call as we go over them.
Okay, walk us through what's going on for each
Yeah,
call
so
here.
the first thing we're going to do, ignore this. This is just some data. It allows you to kind of like mock up what you're expecting for testing purposes. But this is essentially an example of what it's passing in. And then the next thing we need to do is get the transcript. So the Gong API is returning basically all the calls and some of their details, but it's not actually giving you the meat of the call itself. So we're going to call a separate endpoint, which is the get transcript call, and that's going to return this really detailed transcript with all the backs and forths and all the sentences. So that's a big document. And the first thing we want to then do is extract the point in that document where the question is being asked that we're interested in, or the topic that we're interested in. Now, this is a really important call out. You'll notice I've got two different AI steps here. The little purple star means an AI step. One to extract the excerpt, and one to categorize the excerpt. And
Mm.
the key thing, if I had to give like one takeaway I've learned so far from building automations with AI, is that you want to break that job down as much as you can. You know, everyone wants to build these like massive agents that do all these crazy things. But what you find, at least what I've found when trying to do that in an automated way, is that it'll just go off the rails. You'll never get the reliability, at least right now, that you're looking for. So the best way to do it is just break it down, break it down, break it down. And in the beginning, I even had these two things, you know, find the excerpt and categorize it is not that difficult. But even so, you can start to run into issues where are you defining what that excerpt is, or how are you, chunking out different quotes if there's more than one mention of something. So breaking this down and just having each step be one job, and then really obsessing over the quality of that job and fine tuning your prompt for that end is how you're going to get the most reliability and the most quality out of it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that goes with it. Like a lot of other things too that I've tried, whether that's like the personalization at scale with each snippet in an email. I was even doing this in Clay, and it's like personalize the intro, then personalize, a
Exactly.
separate function, personalize, the CTA, separate, personalize the subject line, and you get much better of an output than if you just said personalize everything in this one email all in one prompt, right?
That's exactly it. Yeah, decomposing, and
Yeah, there you go. Yep.
I've learned that the hard way through a lot of the things I've done. But
Yeah.
now I'm like, just how narrowly can I break this down? And it feels like it might be a bit more work, but the improvement in quality and just having an easier time debugging if something's going off the rails is very, very much worth it. So this extract excerpt, it's a pretty standard type of prompt, just being very detailed about like, hey, here's what you need to do. These are the requirements that we have. In this case, it's pretty simple. We just want the direct verbatim extract from the transcript. Don't make something up. Giving it examples, that's a really important best practice to model, what you're looking for. And then if there's something empty, letting it know what to do. Like, don't make something up if there's not anything there, because it
Good point.
quite often
Yeah.
would. You also get a system message here, which is basically where you can put the role. One of the things you'll notice, so I'm using Gemini. I really like Gemini. Has a very big context window. It's affordable. 2.5 Pro is quite powerful, and it's kind of what we have as a company. But one of the things you'll see is that every model has its quirks. So you have to kind of learn the model. And if I was to switch this to something else, it might work a little bit differently. So kind of dialing in your instructions and prompt for the exact model that you're using is also important. But for something like this, from throwing in a really big transcript, potentially big transcript, this is great. And you can see what the output is here. It's just a nice string, exactly what I've asked for. Hey, how did you come across us? And the person, they did some Google deep diving, and they asked ChatGPT, which is always kind of cool to see. So this is the answer that we're getting. So that's kind of step one. We've got a string, but this isn't yet in a usable format.
Mm.
What we want to do with this, you could just categorize it, but for deeper analysis, what I would like to have personally is, all right, I want to keep that exact verbatim excerpt because that's kind of useful to like really see the voice of the customer just as it was. Then I want to classify it. And it's not always one rigid thing. Like, you can already see that there's kind of more than one thing going on here. So allowing almost like a rich multi-select classification to be okay. And then a bit of a rationale, which is good for auditing. Like, if we want to just see like, why did you think that way? So we're passing this over into the next step, which is to categorize that excerpt. And again, very similar structure here. Hey, you're going to get an excerpt from that transcript. This is what you need to do. I give examples for each of the categories that we want. And I'm using a particular flavor of the Retool AI AI step, which is the classify text. And what that does is it allows us to specify little pills of exactly the outcomes that we want, which is going to direct the LLM and provide a bit of a guardrail around what it's outputting. I'm also giving it a JSON output. And, there are some some LLMs that actually let you, specify a specific JSON schema that you're looking for, and that will enforce it a bit more stringently. In this case, we're not able to do that within this interface. So I'll show you how I'm handling that. Number one, just being really specific, obviously, about what we're looking for. The excerpt, an array of classifications, if there's more than one, and a rationale. But you'll see that even though I'm telling it, hey, don't, where did I say it? Where's the system prompt here? I'm telling it, don't use markdown, don't use this little thing. It still kind of puts the markdown fencing around it to say, tick, 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 JSON. So we're going to handle that. It's fine. The structure is okay. But right now, this is a string, and it's actually a bit of a dirty string because it includes that. So since in working with Retool, I've seen this happen over and over and over again. Working with LLMs, we've actually been able to put together some nice little code snippet that handles some of these main scenarios. So it's going to go through and try to turn that JSON into a real live JSON object rather than just a text string so that we can use it downstream. And it handles kind of those most common failure states. So, all right, is it just a nice clean object? Great, we'll just JSONify it. Does it include, tick, tick, tick JSON? All right, we'll take that out. Did it mangle the schema a little bit? Here's the schema we're looking for. Try to put it back together again. Generally speaking, that including the markdown fencing around it is the biggest issue, and it will clean that up really nice. So you can see that after I run it through that utility, I get this beautiful object here, which has the excerpt, it has the classification, online research, LLM recommendation. So it caught both of those things that the person mentioned. And it has the rationale, which is, hey, they mentioned these two things. And that's why I've included them.
Nice. I love it. Okay, cool.
And then the final step, this is really where it's choose your own adventure. For my purposes, I really want to have this data in a format where we can do a deeper analysis on it. That's the primary purpose. So I'm updating a Snowflake table with it. But you can do whatever you want with this. You can send it to Slack if you want to just, have like a real-time feed of insights dripping on you. You can do both. You can really easily add multiple steps here. So the world is your oyster, but for me, being able to take unstructured, free-flowing data that is very rich with insight, retain that granularity, so we're not losing the raw text, but on top of that, adding the classification in a multi-select fashion, and then putting that into a database where we can run quantitative analysis on it. That's the dream that we're living right now. And in the past, that would have been a human being, a contractor, something like that needed to do that. Now we can do that in an automatic pipeline.
Yeah, I love that. Now, in theory, could you do give me all the calls from the past year or something? Or could you even give me all the calls from a certain rep or a certain territory? Could you build that in the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, you can have a lot of flexibility. If you did it
Yeah.
for the past year, you'd probably need to build additional logic to paginate through multiple pages of calls. So everything's possible. Similar with the right rep, a lot just depends on specific APIs that you're dealing with, and Gong's API has its quirks. I don't think it lets you filter by rep, for example, but you can expose that information. So you'd probably do something very similar to what we've done here, except instead of filtering by tracker ID, you'd have your code filter by rep or by, a property of the company that they're speaking to, or, something else.
Or what Gong team they're on or something, maybe.
Exactly. You can expose, that's the nice thing, is that you can expose. You see here that all I'm exposing is the tracker and the brief. There's many other fields that you could expose here. And so any field that you can bring over, you can then filter by. And it's not a terrible way of doing it, as long as you can handle that input. But that's a good example of where, if you try, you can only loop over 500 items in a Zapier loop. And if your payload is too big, it could be significantly less than that. So I've run into those limits before in Zapier or in other tools, whereas Retool, it can handle this larger volume fairly easily. So this is where some of those tool-specific things can start to, become important. Yeah, just something to think about.
Cool. Any other creative ways we can use something like this? So instead of how'd you hear about us, maybe we're doing research on a specific competitor or seeing, doing some sort of win-loss analysis.
The only limit is your imagination. So competitive analysis is a really important use case. So imagine you've got this pipeline and now you have your 10 or 20 competitors and you're looping over it and you're tracking every mention of those competitors and you're tracking sentiment and what people like about those competitors' features or dislike about those competitors' features in real time, and then using that to inform your battle cards or feeding that into a conversational assistant and letting your reps, chat with competitive intelligence that's up to the minute. That's a really awesome really awesome use case rather. Pain points. So let's say you're thinking about marketing campaigns or messaging, extracting how people are describing their problems, in their own language, and then basing your campaign or your ad copy around something like that. That's something that we've explored. Product features, prioritizing roadmap, trying to figure out like what are the things that people are really asking for when they're coming to us. It's all buried in calls. You probably have hundreds of them. If you've got a big sales force, you've got a lot of data there. So getting that into a structured format can be really valuable. Objections, that's another really useful one.
Yeah,
Problem
totally.
framing. To me, this is like, I know Gong and tools like it are meant as like sales coaching tools, but I think they're a marketer's greatest dream. It's just that we're not today enabled to access that data fully. So something that like this opens the box and lets you do that.
Yeah, agreed. Love it. Well, I appreciate you sharing this with us, Justin. And for all those listeners, yeah, we're gonna. Justin has been gracious enough to give us the JSON file so you can upload this and then tweak it in your instance of Retool, or just kind of try to rebuild it in n8n or whatever your tool of choice is. All right, cool. Ready for rapid fire?
I'm ready.
All right. What is your current AI tech stack aside from Gemini and Chat, GPT, and Retool?
Yeah, so all those things we use all the kind of main foundation models in the work we're doing, Gemini, Claude, GPT. They kind of all have their strengths and weaknesses. So in the workflows that we're building, we can mix and match, which I think is great. We use Dust, which is a French-based company that builds conversational assistants or enables you to build conversational assistants and agents.
What was that one? Dust?
Dust, yeah, the website is
Okay, I haven't heard of that one.
dust.tt. Really like it.
Okay.
Essentially gives you choice of LLMs, lets you hook up knowledge. This is where it's really powerful, is that you can connect it to Confluence, you can connect it to Snowflake, you can connect it to your Google Drive. And so instead of just chatting to ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, you're chatting to the LLM plus knowledge. And rather than having to, have the technical know-how to build like a big RAG pipeline yourself, it's just as simple as a few clicks to hook
Oh,
those things up.
nice.
And that is extraordinarily powerful. So like we have an assistant where it's like Gong and Salesforce, and those two things together and being able to chat with that is great. So I really like Dust for that. Less so for like fully automated workflows like this. Like this is where something like Retool is really powerful. And then for orchestration, Retool and Zapier are the tools we have today.
Nice. I love it. Where do you go to keep up with everything AI related?
Yeah. So there's a lot of Substacks, a lot of newsletters. There's a few of them, that I subscribe to, and they're good at like keeping on top of everything. The Unwind is particularly a good one that I like. But for actually, digging deep into practical how to, there's a few Substackers that I like. Chris Tyson is one. He's a consultant and is one of a small handful of folks that I feel is really speaking to the realities of how to implement AI transformation in a business context today. Very, no hype, just actual hands-on truth and the challenges that you'll face. So really appreciate his work. Near Diamant is another one. Again, really practical, technical. There's also a YouTube channel called AI Engineering that I really like, and that's more targeted at developers, but just personally, I've found it most useful to kind of learn from folks that are like a level ahead of where I am technically. So even though I'm not a developer per se, and I'm not kind of working in that way, the sorts of things that they're thinking about, how do you manage memory, reliability, what are like good design patterns, all those things are very easily transplantable into the world that I'm in. And generally that has been a lot more useful for me than like, I don't know, commenting on people's posts on LinkedIn and hoping to get something
Totally.
good out of that. So yeah, those are some of the things I'm looking at.
Nice. Yeah, I am when I'm learning about AI, like I feel like Substack and YouTube are my best channels right now. Like, it's just too noisy, and a lot of people are just hyping themselves up on LinkedIn or trying to sell a course or something.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Nice. All right. Last question. What's your biggest AI challenge right now?
Reliability at production scale.
Hmm.
So, getting something that works in a demo that looks great, not that difficult to do. Getting something that works reliably every single time in a production setting where it can be completely automated is a huge challenge, I think, across the whole field right now. It's the biggest challenge. And that's the thing that I'm, kind of obsessed with, is like how to bring the sort of reliability and automation design that I've typically always expected and had expected of me, and bringing it into this new world of AI.
Yeah, totally. I'm with you there. And I think a lot of people are probably facing the same challenges.
It's the biggest thing, but it's also the most fun thing. So it's
Totally.
cool.
All right, awesome. Justin, where can people find out more about what you're up to? Where can people follow you? Hint, go check out his Substack, AI Builders.
Yeah, so aibuilders.blog, something I started this year, which I'm super excited about. And again, it's just focused on exactly what it sounds and what I just described. How do we build AI that is reliable in production? Also, look me up on LinkedIn. Happy to connect.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.